Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Writer's Workshop. Before we get started, let's make sure we're ready to learn. So eyes watching, ears listening, quiet as a mouse, and still like a pretzel. Okay, so the last time we met, we talked about bringing our stories to life by making our characters move or talk. We called that unfreezing them. We talked about how we can make our characters think and feel. We called that bringing the inside out because we can't see how our characters are thinking or feeling unless we specifically say so. And we talked about telling our story in very small steps so the reader can really feel what it was like to be there. Today, you're going to learn about all the different ways to write a closing. So you guys have had some practice with closings when you wrote your opinion pieces, so this information won't be brand new, but you are going to learn some new ways of how you can write your closing. Okay, so why do we write a closing? Well, we want our writing to feel finished. Okay, we want our reader to know we're done. Okay, gives it just a nice, it wraps it up. Okay. And we also want to remind our reader of the main idea of the story. Like, so what? Who cares? Why did you write this story? Our closing can remind our reader why we wrote it in the first place. So how do we wrap up our writing? Well, let's take a look. There's 5 ways we're going to talk about. The first way you know very well. Okay, you can rephrase your opening. And all that means is that we say our opening in a new way using different words, okay? So if my opening here was, do you love pools? I can just rephrase that, remind my reader of how much pools are great. And I said, I wish I could spend my whole life in my grandparents' pool, okay? Just rephrased it using new words. Number 2, tell how you're feeling now. So this piece we talked about in detail last time. I gave all these details, told it in such small steps, and at the very end, I told how I was feeling now. I felt like the luckiest kid in Manchester. Okay? A third way that you can write a closing is to tell a lesson you learned. Okay? So I'm going to read you this piece because I'm going to use it in my next example too. Okay? Ouch, I yelled as I hit the floor with a thud. My big brother had shoved me out of the way on his way to the kitchen. Mom had just pulled a batch of cookies out of the oven and the smell of chocolate was wafting in the air. I yelled after him, "You better save me some," but he didn't listen. Now I know to never get in the way of Jake and his cookies. Okay, so the lesson this girl learned in the story was stay out of my brother's way when he's getting cookies. Otherwise, I might end up on the floor. Okay, so you can tell the lesson you learned. Another example, like say you slipped on the ice and you wrote about that in your story about going to the hospital or something. You could say, when you wrap it up in your closing, you could say, now I know I have to be careful on the ice. Okay, a lesson that you learned. Okay, the fourth way is that you could give a hope for the future. Okay, so in the same example, when Jake is being mean and pushing his little sister out of the way of the cookies, she could say the exact same thing in her personal narrative all the way down to the last detail, except instead of saying, now I know to never get in the way of Jake and his cookies, she could say, I hope one day he can learn to share. Okay, so you give a hope for the future. And the last thing that you can do is you can give the reader an update. Okay, so in this example of the tablet again, where I told every little last detail, instead of saying how I felt, I could give an update and I could say, now I use my tablet morning, noon, and night. Okay, so what am I doing with it now? Okay. So now it's your turn to write a closing. You can write a closing just like we do. And remember, You can write a closing by rephrasing the opening, telling how you feel now, telling the lesson you learned. You can give a hope for the future, or you can give the reader an update. Lots of choices you have. All right, my friends. Happy writing. I will see you next time.